Liverpool, England, 1924. The sound from the cellar. Liverpool, autumn of 1924. The poor awoke before the city. Even before the sun appeared, the creak of ropes, the distant thud of ship hulls, and the echo of dockworkers' voices filled the cold morning. Air on a narrow street near the docks, between rows of brick houses darkened by soot, stood an old building few people noticed. It was a narrow, two-story house with small windows and a door that creaked. Whenever it opened, that was where Margaret Holloway lived. She was 40 years old and worked as a seamstress from home. Since the end of the war, she rarely went out, except to buy supplies or deliver finished work. Most of her days were marked by the steady sound of her sewing machine and the silence that followed. There was something about that house that unsettled the neighbors. At night, when everything seemed quiet, a low, uneven sound would rise from beneath the floorboards. It was not constant. Sometimes it sounded like a slow, dragging noise. Other times, like a soft knocking, as if someone were trying to be heard without drawing attention. Some said it was rats. Others blamed old pipes. But no one had entered the cellar in years. Margaret never spoke of it. She avoided questions, and she kept the cellar door locked at all times. The house had belonged to the Holloway family for more than 50 years. Her father had been a dock worker. The cellar had once been used to store coal. During the war, it had been sealed in haste and never used again. That October week, Margaret began sewing a child's coat. The fabric was plain but carefully chosen. She worked slowly, as though every stitch mattered. The neighbor next door, a young mother who had recently moved to the street, remarked one afternoon, "I didn't know you had children." Margaret smiled faintly. "I don't." On the third night in a row that the sound returned, Margaret did not rise from her bed. She lay still, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between one noise and the next. On the fourth night, she lit a candle. She went down the stairs slowly and stopped in front of the Cellar door. The key was where it had always been, inside an old tin on the kitchen shelf. The door opened with difficulty. The air inside was cold and heavy, filled with dust and the lingering smell of old coal. The candlelight revealed forgotten boxers, rusted tools, and a small trunk against the far wall. The sound came from there. Margaret stepped closer. Inside the trunk were only a few items: a child's shoe, a small scarf, and a broken music box. When she touched the box, the sound stopped. Margaret sat down on the floor. That cellar held something that had never been spoken aloud. During the final years of the war, her younger sister, Evelyn, had lived there with her. Evelyn had fallen ill in the winter of 1918. There were no doctors available, and there was not enough money. She died quietly, and Margaret had never left the house after that. The next morning, Margaret opened the front door earlier than usual. She carried a small bag with her. She walked to the end of the street, to the home of the young mother. She knocked and handed her the newly sewn child's coat. "It will fit when winter comes," she said, nothing more. That night, the sound did not return. Days later, Margaret left the cellar door unlocked. Some houses make noise because they are old. Others make noise because they hold what was never spoken. And there are silences that only rest when someone finally chooses to listen.